Hi, Vicki Williams here. I'm going to be doing Lab 3 today, temperature and its effects on solubility. So I'm going to be taking 4 test tubes and putting a different amount of potassium nitrate in each test tube, and each test tube will also get 5 milliliters of water. Okay. This is potassium nitrate, and when I open it up, you see it looks like, I don't know how well you can see it, looks like little balls in there. It's kind of hard to measure, funny to measure. And we're going to be using this. Now we're going to take, let me show you the setup here. I have a hot plate, a beaker of water with a temperature probe in it, and I have a second clamp that keeps the cord for the temperature probe off the hot plate, because that's a great way to ruin a temperature probe, and then that increases the price of your education. Now once I weigh the potassium nitrate and put the potassium nitrate in each test tube and add 5 milliliters of water, then we'll put the test tubes in the hot plate. And what we're going to be measuring, we're going to take one test tube out at a time with the temperature probe in the test tube and see the exact temperature at which crystals start to form. And at this point, this will tell us that the amount of potassium nitrate in that test tube at that temperature is the maximum amount that can dissolve. And if the temperature goes any lower, it will be a saturated solution and no more will dissolve. And we're going to do that for 4 different test tubes. Unfortunately, I tried to film the crystallization for you, and the cameras just aren't good enough for you to see the crystals as they're forming. So I'm not going to try and videotape that part for you. When we measure solubility, we usually measure it in grams of solute per 100 grams of water and the corresponding temperature. So each amount we put in 5 milliliters of water, I'm going to put the equivalent amount in the computer as if we were doing it in 100 milliliters of water, but that would be very wasteful. So test tube number 1 is going to have 2 grams of potassium nitrate, and on the graph that'll show us 40 grams per 100. Test tube number 2 is 4 grams potassium nitrate, which will be the equivalent of 80 grams per 100. Test tube number 3 will have 6 grams of potassium nitrate, which is the equivalent of 120 grams per 100. And lastly, test tube 4 will have 8 grams of potassium nitrate, which is the equivalent of 160 grams per 100 grams of water. I have labeled each of my weigh boats with the chemical and the amount of grams I'm going to put in it. So I wanted to show you those. Now I'm going to go over to the scale and get the potassium nitrate. So I'm going to turn my scale on. Oh, it would help if I plugged the scale in. Now turn the scale on, make sure it's at 0. There it is at 0. I'm going to put my weigh boat on and re-zero the scale. And now I'm going to ever so gently. Potassium nitrate comes as little balls. Let me see if I can show you. and they slide off the spatula very easily. We have 1.93, so I need just a little bit more. Okay, there's my 2 grams. I will not show you how I weigh the rest of them because it's basically going to be the same. Now I want to briefly show you how I get the potassium nitrate into the test tube. It comes as these little balls that are very hard to manipulate. So I just squeeze my weigh boat and tip that into the test tube, and I can get all of the potassium nitrate in there. There's 2 grams. Here are the 4 test tubes with different amounts of potassium nitrate in them. 2, 4, 6, and 8 grams. Then I'll put the water in. Now I wanted to show you the test tubes with the water in them. You can see that the potassium nitrate does not dissolve all the way. There's test tube 2, test tube 3, and test tube 4. Now I'm going to put all the test tubes in the hot water bath. And just set these in. Whoops, now I can see that the hot water bath is a little full. So I'm going to remove some water. Now I'm going to put the test tubes in the hot water bath. And then I'm going to stir test tube 1 with a stirring rod until I get all the solid to dissolve. Now I'm removing test tube 1 from the water bath, and I've got that temperature probe in it so I can record the exact temperature when the solid starts, and I know from experience that test tube 1 needs to be cooled off in water or we're going to wait forever for the crystals to start forming. So just waiting to see the crystals form. And they've started to form, so I'm going to get that temperature. I'll give you the numbers later. I'm going to do the same thing for the other 3 test tubes, and I won't videotape those, but I'll show you a picture of them when they're all done.